are these people?
This is developing and will continue to develop. But I thought about this today. I was probably well too on the nose with the Batman. Like with the Batman imagery there. But I mean, it relates to Batman. I thought about this morning, like
same Bat channel.
You know, Batman became radicalized with the death of his parents due to crime in Gotham. So,
Right.
like, you know, you can make the argument for Luigi. It's a similar thing, except maybe in terms of healthcare. But we don't even know if
that is his real name. We know nothing.
I'm pretty
I know
sure it is. But
this whole story, the minute it happened, I'm like, something's up. You know, especially when we needed loads of distractions for Siri to happen and all sorts of other stuff to happen. I'm like, something's up. My smell-o-vision got turned on, you know, but
right.
And it hasn't turned off since then. It's just been quite a bit of sus behavior, you know?
Right.
So
we're going to get into that. And as I said, I'm going to be very careful because he's alleged right now. Like, you say what you want, but we're in a country where we leave innocent until proven guilty.
Yep.
So we're also going to go with that. But as I said earlier, like, here's how we're going to break this down. We're going to break down the CEO. We're going to break down Luigi and what we know, or at least what the media wants you to know. And then we're going to dial it back and let you know what we are really thinking. But in the midst of all of that, as I said earlier, this whole thing is based around healthcare, assumedly, and the corruption within that industry. You guys know me very well. I am a big proponent of universal healthcare in general, especially here. Everyone, I'm sure in the chat, and please let us know if you have horror stories of healthcare in the chat. And like Reef and I, you know, like, I think that's one of the things in independent media. I think generally among us, Savvy, JB, Nick, like Kit, like Cabello, like a lot of us, all of us are kind of united on this issue. One of the issues I think in independent media among us, we're all united over, you know, is universal healthcare. We all have had horrible experiences of healthcare in this country, whether among us personally or among our own families. So for us, healthcare is a big issue in generally. Like, we support the idea generally of a universal healthcare system here. That I say all of that, and I said this earlier, don't make the mistake of tying this issue to a person. Luigi should not be the face of the corruption of healthcare in this country. Let the issue stand for itself, because the issue in of itself is eternal. We're going to forget Luigi at some point. Maybe. You know? But the idea of universal healthcare should be eternal. So I say all of that because I don't want people to get in this trap in like the person epitomizing the idea versus the idea should stand for it. So that being said, let's get into it. So we're first going to talk about the CEO. Well, actually, I'm not. Caitlin Johnson is going to. So she's going to talk about who the real villains are in this whole thing. So let's hear what, actually, Tim Foley is going to read this.
Yep.
Let's hear what Tim Foley has to say.
The real villains. The CEO of health insurance giant UnitedHealthcare was gunned down by a masked assailant on Wednesday, much to the delight of Americans who've been suffering under their nation's abusive healthcare system and the sociopathic profiteers who make their fortunes exploiting them through it. UnitedHealthcare has an unusually high rate of claim denials, even compared to its fellow predatory health insurance companies, And as CEO of the company, Brian Thompson was personally raking in $10.2 million a year. The casings on the bullets used to murder Thompson reportedly had the words deny, defend, and depose written on them, an apparent reference to the delay, deny, defend tactics notoriously used by health insurance companies to avoid payouts. According to Thompson's wife, he had been receiving threats from people because of his company's actions, telling NBC News that the threats were from people who were angry about, quote, "I don't know, a lack of coverage?" ? That's an actual quote, by the way. The way she phrased it as a question says so much about how psychologically compartmentalized she had been from her husband's predatory behavior. Like the wife of a mob boss who doesn't think too hard about where all the money and gifts are coming from.
Yeah, he works at waste management.
The conversations this story has sparked are very interesting. I've seen a lot of posts online highlighting the fact that the murder victim in this case was himself a murderer, and a much more prolific one than any serial killer or mass shooter who's ever lived. The only difference was that his style of murder was protected by the law.
Right.
This really nails home the point that the legal system is not intended to protect ordinary citizens from the worst people in our society. It's there to protect the very worst in our society from ordinary citizens. You can see this just by watching the frenetic police manhunt that's underway for Brian Thompson's killer, while Thompson himself was walking around a free man, and an obscenely wealthy one at that, despite his having made his wealth via profits reaped from corporate policies designed to deprive sick and injured people of health care as frequently as possible.
Can you pause there for a second?
None of the world's worst.
And also, this guy was known to do insider trading that was being looked into. So he wasn't he's not a good guy. And look, I'm not saying that he should be dead. But the idea that people are saying, oh, you should have sympathy for him in terms of because he was a father and like a husband and
his
there are millions of
kids and
people who
wife are
have
gonna
died
be
who
more
are
than all
also
right.
fathers and have kids
Yeah.
that are dead now because their insurance companies screwed them over. So, you can call out one without necessarily calling out the other. And Caitlin said a great point here. His crimes are legal.
Yeah.
But allegedly Luigi wasn't. So there's a difference there. Keep going.
People are in prison. Our society is fed a steady diet of movies and shows depicting heroic protagonists fighting villains who abuse and murder people in illegal ways, when in real life the actual villains of our society murder people in ways that are completely legal. None of their abuses are against the law. Everyone's talking about the murderous practices of U.S. health insurance companies today, and rightly so. But we should also bring awareness to the fact that it isn't just billionaire healthcare corporations who are killing and abusing people at mass scale for profit. Anyone who rakes in billions is building an empire on the blood, sweat, and tears of ordinary people. At the very least, they are leveraging unfair socioeconomic systems to extract labor from people around the world at extortionate rates, because everyone needs money and most people are born under the unfortunate circumstance of having nothing to sell but their labor. Workers are given the bare minimum slice of the corporate pie in order to maximize profits, in exactly the same way health insurance companies deny claims to maximize profits, keeping huge numbers of people toiling and crushing poverty. These abuses are exceptionally worse in the ways they are inflicted upon the populations of the global South. And poverty kills. That's the bare minimum level of abusiveness you will find in these billionaire corporations. The most profitable ones are far more abusive. They actively work to create more and more war, ecocide, exploitation, and inequality because these things increase their profits. They lobby governments for more wars and militarism around the world because they manufacture weapons of war. They lobby governments to shrink environmental regulations because they maximize their corporate profits by pillaging the earth and externalizing the costs of industry onto the biosphere we all depend on. They lobby governments for fewer worker protections because worker protections eat into profits. They lobby governments for exploitative trade agreements because globalization gives them a steady supply of cheap wage slaves with fewer workers' rights. They lobby governments to privatize services and resources so they can turn things people are already getting into coercive mechanisms of private profit extraction. These abuses are the product of the exploitative, profit-driven, competition-based systems under which we all live. In a system where it's profitable to sell health insurance and frequently deny insurance claims, you're going to see psychopaths rise to obscene levels of wealth and power by profiteering off health insurance. In a system where war is profitable, you're going to see psychopaths rise to obscene levels of wealth and power by profiteering off war. In a system where ecocide is profitable, you are going to see psychopaths rise to obscene levels of wealth and power by profiteering off ecocide. In a system where exploitation is profitable, you're going to see psychopaths rise to obscene levels of wealth and power by profiteering off exploitation. Our laws and police forces exist first and foremost to protect these abusive systems. They are not there to protect us. They are there to protect our abusers. They're there to make sure what happened to Brian Thompson happens as rarely as possible, and that people like him are able to abuse people like you and me with total impunity.
There was a quote that part right there, I think I think that's kind of where a lot of the gray area is. I think more especially like the seeds of doubt that have been planted in terms of like how legit this is. We know that the police operate to protect the elite. So, which I think where it gets messy because Luigi is among the elite. So what's the connection there? We don't quite know. But what is all of this leading to in terms of what are they trying to hide or cover up? Or like what are like what are they trying to maneuver here in terms of, and we'll get into it later, but kind of a lot of things are seen to kind of fall into place very quickly, which hasn't made a lot of sense to you or Indy from the jump. And I think even from today, it was just kind of like, I was kind of on the fence. And now I've been like, something has been whatever.
Yep.
Regardless. So Kaylin breaks it down in terms of, the exploitation, not just of our healthcare system, but like the exploitation of the elites in general, like whether it's here or worldwide. Now let's break down what mainstream media is saying more specifically about Luigi. So I forgot this chick's name, and for all intents and purposes, I don't care to know her name. But she's on News Nation. So this is some of what she said. Now, keep in mind, a lot of this was kind of early on, just as early on this week, as allegedly Luigi was pinned down to this crime. So let's see what she has to say regarding all of this. So go ahead.
Great job. Well done. What promise that kid had 9 years ago. Great job. What promise. Oh my God. Can you imagine being that teacher now, those fellow students?
Yes.
Well, it turns out that the school he appeared to love so dearly had to blast out an email today saying that they are, quote, deeply distressed at what's happened. And we found a more recent, more ominous peek into Mangione's mindset from his reading list on the website Goodreads, a list that has now been locked down. Remember I told you at the top of the show? Poof. things just quickly disappear? Well, in one post, Mangione gives 4 stars to a book by none other than Ted Kaczynski, the mathematician turned terrorist known as the Unabomber. And of that book, Luigi writes this: "It's easy to quickly and thoughtlessly write this off as the manifesto of a lunatic in order to avoid facing some of the uncomfortable problems it identifies."
He ain't wrong.
Goes on to say, when all other forms of communication fail, violence is necessary to survive. You may not like his message, but to see things from his perspective, it's not terrorism, it's war and revolution, end quote, the suspected CEO killer says of Ted Kaczynski's writing. And finally, again, Mangione says this of Kaczynski: peaceful protest is outright ignored. Economic protest isn't possible in the current system. So how long until we realize that such violence against those who lead us to such destruction is justified as self-defense? Again, the words of Luigi Mangione when referring to Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber, murderer, terrorist. And I mentioned the suspect also had a manifesto of his own when he was busted today, which reportedly reads in part, "These parasites had it coming," end quote. And, quote, "I do apologize for any strife and trauma, but it had to be done," end quote.
Yeah.
I can't stop thinking about what
that same manifesto also said, "Hey, feds, good people," as like the first sentence. So
we'll get into the manifesto.
One very significant word. Parasites.
Mostly, so.
Plural, parasites. Are we going to find out later that this suspected killer allegedly had other targets? Plural?
Hopefully.
Believe me, we are just at the beginning of this case, folks. After the break, he didn't get far. He was not on the loose for very long. Thanks for watching. Go to
No, fuck you, Ashla Banfield, with your fucking bourgeoisie bullshit.
She talks about how violence is not okay. I'm going to show you someone who thought it was.
I guarantee you she finds violence okay.
About him.
Probably beats her kids every morning. Well, anyway,
go ahead. Let's see what Nelson Mandela has to say regarding violence.
Rather than confrontation, except in cases where we cannot proceed, where we cannot move forward. Then, if the only alternative is violence, we will use violence.
Sounds familiar.
He said it. Yeah.
What's
he said choose peace, but if you can't get it,
what's nonviolence only works when your oppressors have a conscience. You know,
so we can play any any civil rights leader, mostly, who would kind of disagree with you, Ashley, in terms of violence. Like, violence begets violence. You cause violence on the people, they're going to respond in kind. The only difference, as I said earlier, your kind of violence is accepted and almost legal, as Caitlin said. Ours isn't. Shout out to, this is actually Ryan Knight, those of you who know him, at Proud Socialist, and he tweeted a part of Luigi Mangione's manifesto. I'm saying
allegedly.
Allegedly. Okay. I do apologize for any strife or traumas, but it had to be done. Frankly, these parasites simply had it coming. A reminder, the US has the #1 most expensive healthcare system in the world, yet we rank roughly 42 in life expectancy. United is the largest company in the US by market cap, behind only Apple, Google, Walmart. It has grown and grown, but has our life expectancy. No, the reality is, these health insurance companies have simply gotten too powerful, and they continue to abuse our country for immense profit because the American public have allowed them to get away with it. Obviously, the problem is more complex, but I do not have the space, and frankly, I do not pretend to be the most qualified person to lay out the full argument. But many have illuminated the corruption and greed decades ago, and the problems simply remain. It is not an issue of awareness at this point, but clearly power games at play. Evidently, I am the first to face it with such brutal honesty. So, those were allegedly his words. And we're going to get into more of what people in the past have had to say about our of our healthcare system. But here's Luigi yesterday being taken in by the cops. And this was the part where I think surprised a lot of people in terms of what he said here.
Oh, dude, come on.
As completely out of touch, and as an insult to intelligence.
Oh,
Like,
I cut it too short.
Insult to the intelligence of the American people.
And I, yeah, you can actually try and play it in full.
Yeah, here, I'll do this.
But yeah, I cut it too short because it repeated twice. So.
Oh, dude, come on.
As completely out of touch, and as an insult to the intelligence of the American people and the lived experience.
Well, basically said that this is an insult to the American people. Now, I have a theory as to why, because I shared this with Reef just before we went live. I'll speak more into that later, but keep that quote in mind. This is an insult to the American people. So this is an article. Actually, you could switch screens back.
Yep.
This is an article from the International Business Times, which the streets have been saying that this was Luigi's alleged motive. So Luigi Mangione was reported missing by family after back surgery a month before he shot and killed UnitedHealthcare CEO Brian Thompson.
Allegedly.
Mangione's family sent him a message to his classmates because he went missing and they were trying to find him. So that's the story that's going on right now. Apparently, he wasn't speaking to his family for months, to the point where they put him on they classify him as a missing person, allegedly. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but in the article it says, meanwhile, RJ Martin, a friend and former roommate in Hawaii, told CNN that Mangione had often discussed his back problems in the past. When I first interviewed him before he moved in, I remember he said he had a back issue and he was hoping to get stronger in Hawaii, Martin said. The roommate described Mangione's back problems as so traumatic and difficult that a single surfing lesson left him bedridden for a week. When Mangione had surgery, Martin said that his friend shared X-ray images with him. So I think you've probably seen those images of the screws in his back online. But it looked heinous with just giant screws going into his spine, RJ said. Sources suggest that Mangione may have held a personal vendetta against the UnitedHealthcare CEO due to his experiences with the medical industry. One clue supporting this theory is an X-ray on his X account, which shows 4 pins in the spine. Also, Mangione's Goodreads accounts reveal 5 books related to chronic back pain, including titles like Crooked, Outwitting the Back Pain Industry, and Getting on the Road to Recovery, and Why We Get Sick, the hidden epidemic at the root of the most chronic disease, and How to Fight It. The books were added to his virtual bookshelf between May 2022 and February 2023. So there's the alleged motive.
Well, looks like we got ourselves a reader.
But even with this, I'm just thinking, like, assuming if it's true, why UnitedHealthcare? And I was talking with DJ Joe, and I shout out to him about this because it's like, unless if he had UnitedHealthcare or if his family had UnitedHealthcare, this seemed very random to me. Like, you know, like why not why not another health industry CEO, like for Aetna, Blue Cross Blue Shield, whatever? It just seems, not to say that it couldn't be true, but it just seems without. And again, I think really, honestly, like assuming this is true, show your bills. Like, show your insurance card of proof that you've had UnitedHealthcare. Because if you're able to show that, then that may make more sense to me. But as of right now, it just seems very random that it was this guy that he chose out of the belief right now that he had a personal health vendetta with the CEO due to his problems, which makes sense, but without necessarily knowing for sure what insurance he had, it doesn't make sense to me that why this guy. So I don't know, but I mean, do you have any thoughts on this? Like it.
I mean, a lot of allegedly's being thrown around,
Right.
Like, I mean, I felt like there was too much consent that needs to be manufactured and too many things to be distracted by for this entire story to be on the up and up as far as accuracy. I mean, we don't even know if this is the person and the motivations and I mean, it just seems like it's too Hollywood scripty to me, you know? Like that's
I said this feels like a CSI episode or a Law and Order episode.
Not. I mean, it just seems like I don't know.
Indy in the chat saying his family. Indy in the chat, his family wasn't helping with his medical bills. Right, like the kid is 26.
Yeah.
So, like we don't know. Like
he would have been just
kicked
off. He would have been just kicked off of the insurance.
Right.
As a 25.
So
right?
assuming that he needed this back surgery when he was probably on his family's insurance.
Yeah.
Unless if he didn't have his own insurance by then, depending on what job he had.
Which we're not even sure that the job is part of the problem with the back surgery. We don't know. I don't know what the cost of, like, what caused the back problem to begin with.
Allegedly from a surfing, like he went surfing and did something to his back or whatever.
Okay.
So that's the story. But so yeah, there's just a lot of
weirdness.
Question marks all around this. But anyway, let's go to these bitches. But I want to play part of this clip because they bring up something that I don't think people have mentioned yet. That might also add to the question marks regarding this story. So you'll probably have to speed up. So you can go ahead when you're ready.
So Tim Clemente's here now, former FBI counterterrorism agent, Mary Ellen O'Toole, senior profiler for the FBI, and Mark O'Mara, criminal defense attorney and former prosecutor. Tim, can I start with you? I just want to play again that outburst because, often when you see a suspect like this, there's a stone-faced would be the way you describe them.
Tim,
this
fix your room noise.
More the opposite of that. Luigi Mangione right outside court today. Here he is.
And completely out of touch and an insult to the intelligence of the American people and the experience.
Tim, it's disturbing to watch that. What he says, we had it written on the bottom of the screen, but just in case anyone's just listening, it's completely out of touch and an insult to the intelligence of the American people. It's lived experience. You hear him shout, and he sounds distressed. He's fighting against police as he does that. What do you make of this?
This is him showing himself, showing what he cares about, which is himself, obviously. I mean, he's not distraught, not going in there with his head held low, not going in there like he's embarrassed by this. This is his moment. And apparently in the last 5 or 6 days, he's probably looked at a lot of social media and seen how many adulating fans he has around the world that are saying he's a hero. These mistaken, misguided people that are trying to say what he did was good. I mean, he committed a cold-blooded murder, obviously.
Look at CNN saying the same thing that Republicans say. Look at that.
Planned it for some time, and now he's basking in the limelight. This is his moment. This is 15 minutes of fame, and he's taking all the advantage he can out of it.
Mary Ellen, there was also a photo taken during those moments in the hearing, and as I described this, the rage is palpable. The sneer, the rage from his eyes, from his expression, and the sneer on his face, his mouth.
If the unibrow don't fit, you must have quit.
This is just a straight stare. But when you look at him in these photos, and when you see that outburst, that rage in that still photo, what do you see, Mary Ellen?
Well, there are definitely signs of rage and anger, but here's the conundrum. you have to really look at what his behavior was like. For example, in the car pulling up there before they got him out of the car, was he cool, calm, and collected? So then he gets out of the car, and then he immediately has this outburst. So was that brought about by the fact that the cameras are on, the media was there, and it immediately put him into the role of wanting a lot of attention? And you have to consider that before you rule it one way or the other. I've seen a lot of offenders, when they go to court, they will act up because it is their time to get that attention, to get that notoriety. The other thing that I look at with him is this: if he was so quick to anger like that, there's an absence of any kind of reports of him getting in fights with people, of him even being arrested by the police for this quick temper. So something is causing this, and it's important that investigators they'll go back to take a look at, is there something medically, is there something mentally, to better understand what's going on with him.
So, Mark, what's interesting in terms of if this was him trying to seize the moment and control the narrative and have his moment in front of the cameras, when he was in court today with his lawyer, and so he's just met this lawyer, right? His lawyer has admitted that he told his client at one point to be quiet and not talk, and then also said this about Mangione.
This is not just a small thing. The fundamental concept of American justice is the presumption of innocent, and until you're proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, and I've seen zero evidence at this point.
What do you think of that, Mark?
First of all, just zero evidence, okay, because nothing has come out yet. I would probably be a bit more circumspect about saying it, because we know some of the evidence is out there. This case is going to run two tracks. One track is the forensic evidence. Did he do it from an evidentiary standpoint? It's going to be very strong because our digital evidence is so strong in cases like this, from cameras to the cell phones themselves. But the other part of it is the mental health mitigation. If they can prove he did it, then the question is why? And I see in those outbursts and his actions, I see nuggets of mental health mitigation coming out to the forefront. And everything has been consistent for 6 months or more, from the, coming off social media, stopping conversations with his family and friends, some bizarre behaviors that we've seen. All of that, I think, is going to show itself as the beginnings of a mental health defense to not did he do it, but why.
Right. Okay. Which could be crucial. So, Tim, to this point.
So I don't think people have said this, but they're already kind of putting in your head mental health.
Right.
Like, oh, well, I think the idea that he went kind of dark.
Overwhelming. Yeah, all that shit.
Yeah.
So,
but I think the idea that he went dark for months, well, they said 2 weeks. He wasn't in contact with his parents for 2 weeks before this actual alleged thing, so, but again, I don't want to make this a race issue. Like, if he were Black, I'm not sure he would necessarily get mental health.
No.
In terms of a motive that would almost kind of sympathize him a little bit.
He wouldn't have even made it to that point. So
no, he would be dead already.
Yeah.
So keep that in mind, because that's probably, we'll see if they go that track, but they're already kind of in their way, kind of softening the blow. And again, I think it has to do, again, a lot with his wealth. He came from a rich family. He comes from a prominent family in Maryland. He's part of the elite. So, I don't think they necessarily want to make it seem like, if he were a person of color, to make it be way worse. They're trying to soften the blow a little bit. So yeah, that's just a thought that I had just in hearing them say he had mental health issues. So go ahead.
Mangione's mother, according to the New York Times, reportedly filed a missing persons report for him in San Francisco, on November 18th. That was just 2 weeks before the shooting. Now, as Mark's pointing out, we know that Mangione stopped communicating with family and friends about 6 months ago. So that timing may make this even more mysterious, right? Nobody reports him missing, as we understand it at this point, for 6 months until 2 weeks before the actual shooting. And it also brings into context this. And does everyone remember this image right here of him on the phone? That's just a few minutes before Brian Thompson walks down the street, Tim, and is allegedly killed by Mangione. He's on his cell phone, and he's talking to someone. So now we know he'd really cut off contact with everyone. It makes that call perhaps even more important. Who do you think he may have been talking to?
Well, Aaron, it's a guess on my part, but I would think that somebody might have been helping him locate Thompson and time Thompson's arrival to the hotel for the convention. And so it could have been something innocent and inadvertent, like talking to a doorman at the hotel that Thompson was staying at. making a plea. Hey, I sent my resume to UnitedHealthcare, and I'm really hoping to meet the CEO today at the investors conference. Can you just let me know when he's arriving? Maybe I can bump into him in the lobby or something. And you do something like that and say, hey, here's my number. Call me if you find out when he's leaving the hotel. Or it could be, I mean, there's a possibility of accomplices. He wrote in his mini manifesto that, to the feds that he acted alone, but that doesn't mean he's telling the truth. But I think there's a possibility that he was gaining intelligence and that phone call had something to do with that, because the close proximity to the time and place of the killing is very important. And it's a call that I'm sure NYPD and the FBI are tracking down in every way they can.
And Mark, I know you think that call is crucial too now.
I think it's crucial for a couple reasons. I think, look, when you plan on shooting somebody, if that was true, you also probably plan on getting shot yourself. I think that phone call may have been saying goodbye to somebody, whether it's a mother, a friend, whatever. Could have been a co-conspirator cohort. I grant you that. But I think it's going to be significant because of who he was possibly saying goodbye to more than anything else.
So, Reef, you missed that, but allegedly, and it's hard to I say allegedly more so because you can't see his face. But a person's walking by making a phone call. So they're saying allegedly that it was him making a phone call just before the shooting. So, but again, we can't see his face. Like, he has a backpack, but that's it. Like, that could be anyone in New York at that time. So, but they're already kind of jumping to the conclusion that it's him, and he was probably making a phone call to someone, like, to whom they don't know. But the assumption is that they that he might be talking to someone, possibly an accomplice, in terms of maybe like where Brian Thompson was located or whatever, so he can go to them, or calling like possibly a family member or somebody, So again, we don't know, but then again, we don't have any of those. We don't have any phone records to kind of confirm that either. So that's kind of the latest thing that mainstream media is kind of pulling to kind of give more of a, I guess, a motive potentially of what Luigi allegedly was doing just before the murder.
Okay.
So just thought it was interesting that they mentioned that, which is why I played that. So okay, I'm done with Luigi, at least for now. Cool. I wanted to play this, and I think I had 3 slides in this. I think 3.
Okay.
You brought me this. This is from a documentary that was published back in 1994, which is called Give Me Single Universal Healthcare or Give Me Death. So again,
I was 1 year old. 1 year old. Of what I was.
So if you're worrying about the quality, that's why of the video. But I think people need to remember that the idea of universal healthcare honestly has been around, or at least has been kind of talked about since the 60s at least. So, but it got some emphasis in the 90s, early 90s. And this documentary kind of talks about that. So I put the link. You can watch it on YouTube. It's an hour long. I did put it in the description if you guys want to watch it. It's probably worth watching the whole thing. So don't think that Bernie was the one who like made this idea. This has been an idea forever, for decades in this country. So, but again, this is my way of kind of saying, do not use Luigi as the crux for this issue. Make the issue of itself the issue. So again, I know you guys have horror stories regarding universal healthcare, but we're gonna hear at least one. But yeah, so we're gonna do this in 3 parts. So we're gonna play this first part regarding, the need for universal healthcare. So you can play. This is short, so you can play that first.
We'll have more news later. But now let's see our documentary about healthcare in the United States and the best form of it. See a documentary called Healing America.
It's eating people alive, and this just can't continue.
I went through the nightmare that millions of people like myself go through, and this has got to be changed.
We have people who are avoiding treatment because they can't afford insurance or they can't afford health care, which is what we really want is health care, not health insurance. If they would provide us with health care nationally as opposed to health insurance, I think we would be going in the right direction.
For every American, health care is their right.
I don't think there is any doubt that the American people do want fundamental health care reform.
Band-aid approaches to health care will not solve the problem. It's only going to get worse.
Hello, I'm John Wilson. The program you're about to see could very well save your life, or at least improve the quality of your life, in a country where health care has become a national crisis, disrupting the peace of mind and the lives of far too many Americans. This volunteer-produced video endorses no political party or candidate. It is the product of a growing grassroots movement dedicated to bringing the United States into line with the rest of the industrialized world, a world that accepts health care as a human right and a national responsibility. Join us now as we take a hard look at some of the devastating effects of the medical insurance industry in America. What is important here will be the practical solution we offer, one that is fair, affordable, and has a proven record of performance. It's known around the world as the single-payer system of universal health care. More and more Americans from all walks of life are supporting the single-payer plan as they discover that it's the only plan that will reduce costs and at the same time maintain the high quality of health care that Americans have come to expect from our medical system. First, let's meet some people who have agreed to share their medical stories. They could easily be your neighbors, your friends, your family. The only difference, perhaps, is that they place their trust in today's healthcare industry only to find themselves living the nightmare of an insurance system that abandoned them.
So this was done yesterday? This was yesterday?
Nope.
These are their stories. They could one day be yours.
You can go to the next clip. So there were a few testimonies, so I chose one for time.
Understood.
So you can go to the next slide and then
I'm working on it. I'm getting there. I'm doing it. Full screen.
Our family has benefited greatly from having a very good medical system in this country. Our son was born with some breathing problems and urinary problems, which if we had not had a very sophisticated medical system in the United States, he would not be alive today. The problem that we have had recently, or over the last 3 years, has been that because of the type of group plan our insurance was under, our rates continue to rise because of both my son's illness and an illness that I had. Between the two of us, our insurance went to over $900 a month.
Hillary Clinton should
now
hear.
We are faced with dialysis and transplant in the near future, and our policy, or at this point David's policy, is very limited in what it will cover, particularly with transplant. Fortunately, with our system, Medicare does cover transplants, but only covers for drug therapy 1 year after transplant. So the very thing that keeps a person alive after transplant, which is the drug therapy, is then cut out after 1 year, as of today. I guess as a middle-class person and having worked for any number of years, both Steve and myself, I found it very frustrating when our insurance premiums got unpayable for us, that I began to research through the social system that our country has in place, and Medicaid would be able to help us out if we made under $13,000 a year. Well, we make more than $13,000 a year, and so we could not avail ourselves of that coverage. And I think that if we did go on Medicaid, we would have something like a $2,700 a month deductible, was what they told us. And I talked to the lady, and I said, well, gee, that's really undoable for us. And I asked her if she had any other suggestions of what we might do. And her comment to me was, well, have you ever thought of moving to another country, a country that has health care provided? And that...
Yep, pause there. You heard what she said?
Yeah,
that
move.
That fucking doctor said.
Move. The doctor said
move.
To move.
Which,
get the fuck
thinking
out of
about
here.
that now, that's such a privileged stance.
Yep.
And I said this to you because I talked to my mom about this yesterday. And funny enough, my mom's doctor said to her the same fucking thing recently. Like, in terms of healthcare that she needed and like trying to figure out how to pay for it. And her doctor said the same shit. Like, my mom, lived in London for a time. Like, that's where I was born.
Yeah.
And she lives in New Jersey now. And, she's American citizen, so she can't live in London now. But, the doctor basically said, well, why didn't you go back to London? I told my mom she should have cussed that doctor right the fuck out there.
Yeah, dude. Like, fucking...
But,
fuck you.
Right. But, yeah. But, like... And I don't want to blame all doctors because I know a lot of doctors are just fed up with the insurance companies too, because they have to deal with them in terms of reimbursement for the care that they're receiving. But the idea that a doctor will kind of tell you that and like the patient is not the problem, it's the people that are above you that are the problem.
Right.
That I just kind of feel is just really wrong because that's not the idea of like as a doctor of what you're there to do. You typically go in there to serve your patients. But I also kind of hear it like that's a lot of the frustration that doctors have with the people above them.
Yeah.
That they say and react in the way that they do with their patients, which I think is just wrong. So that's why I played that part because my mom told me that yesterday of what I doctor recently told her.
Yeah.
So let's play the last clip. As I said, there are more stories like this, and you guys have probably had
Our family.
but let's play this part.
Nice of Rachel Maddow to star in this, though. It's real nice of her. It's full screen.
And we have asked people to leave our insurance plan for less than this. And I know now, in retrospect, that it was all because of money and insurance reasons. You see, you can't leave your job because you can't have your insurance to have your illness with. You can't even go to another job. But for sure, you can't even leave your job, even though you feel sick enough to want to.
This is again 1994.
There should be no connection between job and insurance. I'm sure this helped cause my downfall. It is almost impossible to go through chemo and work. And a lot of people do it, but a lot of people shouldn't have to do it. And that's why I want to say this, because it's got to get better.
Shout out to our girl Shanda Masta dealing with this now, like right now. Like ain't nothing changed.
Has to change.
Right.
These are tragic stories indeed, but the real tragedy lies in the fact that they are heard far too often in this great nation of ours. So what are the alternatives for these people and for the millions of uninsured and underinsured Americans? What are your alternatives? Most of us are ready for change, but it must be change that makes a real difference, that goes beyond hit or miss health care coverage. For to do nothing or simply to patch the present system can only dim long-term prospects for bringing quality care to all Americans. Many experts familiar with the crisis in health care strongly support a single-payer plan. Let's listen now to some of them explain why we need single-payer and how it would work to prevent these and other health care insurance disasters from happening ever again in America.
Single payer will never come to pass.
Center and Associate Professor of Health Policy and Management is Dr. Jay Wolfson.
We spend an awful lot of money in both the public and the private sectors on helping to finance administrative-related costs that have nothing to do with the provision of health care services to people. And it's not the fault of the providers, it's not the fault of the hospitals, it's not the fault of the physicians. It's not necessarily even the fault of the government. It's a system we've kind of fallen into because in the early days of health benefits and health insurance, nobody was interested in nor willing to provide that function. And the insurance industry stepped in naturally. Well, now as a society, both public and private sectors, we have to ask ourselves some very probing questions. Do we need the insurance industry to provide us with health care services? Do we need the insurance industry to provide us with access to health care services?
No.
I think not. I think we've become sophisticated enough technologically. We have enough information about costs and prices and needs of populations, and we certainly can learn more, that if we abandoned the multiplicity of dozens and dozens of fiscal intermediaries pretending to help us receive health care benefits, and instead structured a system where the money we currently spend on health care in both public and private sectors is pooled and a guaranteed minimum level of benefits may be provided, that allows for a lot of things. For one thing, it helps hospitals and other healthcare providers to reduce.
Look at this graph. Okay, 1994, yes? Yeah, here's 1980, 1985. Look, the physician. This is all the doctor money the doctor get. The ones actually providing the health care. This is all the money the administration gets. Look at that, 500% increase. And
Which
I bet
includes
you
the CEOs of these companies.
I bet you this is exponential and fucking through the roof now. So, you know,
reduce those incredible administrative costs that they're currently spending now. And that money can be then channeled toward care, toward services, toward technology. And that's very important.
Well, it seems that some people are thinking that the single-pay system is socialized medicine. Can you comment on that?
Now, there's a real misunderstanding among many Americans about what a single-payer system might involve. Many Americans believe that people are talking about a socialized health insurance system. But I don't think that's accurate. When we talk about a socialized health insurance system, we're really talking about ownership of the means of production by the state. And that means that the physicians, the hospitals, the nurses, the dentists, the clinics, the pharmaceutical companies would literally be owned and employed by the government. That's the case in some countries. That is not what the single-payer system
does pretty well for
suggests. Rather, it suggests that all providers of health care services be paid from a single or a unified source of payment. That all of the money that's currently being diverted to hundreds and hundreds of various third-party middle people organizations be pooled either regionally or at the state level or perhaps even nationally, and that the reimbursement to providers, to physicians, to hospitals, to nurses, to dentists, and for other healthcare services be established on a uniform fee schedule basis. And we've been heading this way with national government policy. We have come to recognize that health is a very valuable commodity in our country, not just because people need it, but because health has really become our most valuable asset in our community. As I've studied other nations, particularly Japan, I've come to realize that both the private and public sectors value the health of their citizens and their employees, because a healthy employee, a healthy citizen, is a productive employee. And the productive citizen, and that's one of the places I believe we may have fallen behind. But I don't believe it's too late to catch up. And if we focus on ensuring, not insuring, but ensuring and assuring access to quality health care services for people with an emphasis on promotion and wellness and reasonable cost, we can significantly reduce the cost of administering our current health care system with a single-payer program.
You can stop there.
Dr. Mark.
But, yeah. Again, 1994. This was mentioned. So I'm sure most of you have not seen that. So don't think that was Bernie who made this. Like, he just capitalized it, you know, in terms of what was happening, you know, a few years ago. But this very idea of universal healthcare has been around forever. So, you know, so shout out to Yuri for pulling that. So, but let's move on. So let's go to
I will
our
say,
colleague,
so
Durin.
Indy sent me this, that Grand Theft World said this is Luigi tossing the gun. You know, they supposedly stated that the gun was in his possession at the McDonald's, but that looks like he's getting rid of something.
Well, you don't know if it's a gun.
Yeah, I don't either. So, but I can't tell anything else necessarily, and he just walks off. So possibly,
and again, that we don't know if that's
close to the crime to like just leave your. Yeah,
I mean, it's the same shoes that he was wearing in that other video where with the
it's
phone,
the same backpack too. I mean, I do believe
same
that's him.
backpack. But again, we don't know if that's him.
Yeah,
you know. So, so someone quoted that from the Lorax, unless someone like you cares a whole awful lot, nothing's going to get better. It's not. our colleague Robert Durgan tweeted, "You'll never get a jury to convict someone living in the hellscape U.S. who went through this, read the Lorax, and then lost his shit. This relates to everyone except the rich."
Yep.
So again, you heard in the stories again from the doc that we played back in 1994. This has been an issue in this country for decades. So, all right. So let's get to the real of it. You and particularly Indy have been calling foul on this from the jump. And I know other people in this space have called this out. I've been kind of on the fence, but as of things that came out today, I'm kind of less. I'm not feeling this at all. It kind of started with the lawyer. Now, by the way, this is a lawyer that more than likely the family is paying for. This is not a court-ordered lawyer. Like, you know how they give you Miranda rights. It's like, if you can't afford an attorney, one would be offered to you at no charge.
Yeah, public defender is
public defender. Like, yeah. So he's not a public defender. So this is a guy that I believe would guess that the family hired for Luigi.
Yeah.
So even with that, this kind of seems suspect to me. But regardless, let's see what he has to say regarding the evidence that was brought up as of maybe a day or two ago, because this is when this hotspot was pulled, and see what he has to say regarding how likely this guy was to actually commit this crime.
Right. Let me full screen it.
The suspect's attorney, Thomas Dickey, addressing the charges against his client while speaking to reporters just a few minutes ago. Take a listen.
Listen, I haven't seen any evidence that says that he's the shooter. So that's, you know, like I said earlier, and I wasn't kidding around. A couple of things. If you're going to report something, report accurately. And remember, and this is not just a small thing, the fundamental concept of American justice is a presumption of innocence, and until you're proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. And I've seen zero evidence at this point.
He said across the board he anticipates that his client, Mangione, will likely plead not guilty, as you said, to the charges there in Pennsylvania for that ghost gun and fake IDs that police said that they found on him when he was arrested, and that when those murder charges officially come down from New York, that they anticipate pleading not guilty there as well. He's saying he hasn't seen any evidence that his client is the shooter. He's saying he should be presumed innocent for now. And we know that Dickey was hired just this afternoon. He's a private criminal defense attorney in that Pennsylvania area obtained by Mangione. He was by his side in that extradition hearing earlier today. This, of course, all coming after Mangione's arrest at that McDonald's in Altoona, Pennsylvania yesterday. And Dickey explained that he believed his client was entitled to bail and believed that the judge should have said it today. And earlier he said that Mangione is taking this as well as he can.
Yeah. So keep in mind, like right now, he's still in Pennsylvania. He had to be extradited in New York. That's what they're working on right now in order to give him, and I believe he will be charged with secondhand murder, I believe, in New York. So, so that's what they're going to be working on for the next month. So, Nick from Revolutionary Blackout Work also, and I know other of our colleagues have too, also are kind of like something seems off with all of this. So let's see what he has to say. I can't hear it.
Can't hear it?
No.
Hold on.
Well, it doesn't matter about me, just making sure our fam's listening, being able to hear it.
Sorry.
The story of Luigi Mangione being arrested after the assassination of that leech Brian Thompson does not pass the smell test. You mean to tell me they found this guy 5 days later in a random McDonald's wearing the same clothes he performed the assassination in? Not only did he apparently have the same clothes on, he also had his murder weapon on him. Bro, you are supposed to toss the murder weapon, not keep it on you, just in case there was any plausible deniability. This guy...
Indy said the other day that like with the amount of time that guy had, you could have disassembled that gun down to its like base atoms and put it in dumpsters around the city. Well, you would have had so much time to get rid of everything. Everything could have gotten rid of.
Especially since you had overwhelming support.
Right.
Like,
you know, found an industrial grinder and then put the dust in the Hudson. Like, you know, so many options.
Allegedly kept his manifesto on him, which is a prosecutor's wet dream, which laid out his entire motives. And apparently Luigi was caught.
That then was given to Ken Klippenstein, which is another fucking, like, red flag to me. When it's the first fucking sentence of it is like, the feds, I think, are nice people, but, you know, I'm sure they're going to try hard. You know, they're going to do good.
Right.
So, yeah. And he said not that he's ever thought about that before. Yeah, just a couple of pigs up in upstate New York, get rid of the body. Okay, fucking
because someone in McDonald's recognized him and called the cops. The person who snitched on Luigi Mangione is the biggest class traitor in modern history. And apparently the most wanted man in America decided to chill at a McDonald's, not get to go, but stay there and wait until the police showed up. If I just pulled off a high-profile assassination and became the most wanted man in America, I'm staying in a safe house for at least a month, let alone going out to eat at a McDonald's in the same outfit they committed the murder in. Get the fuck out of here. Luigi Mangione was either set up or he's the dumbest motherfucker of all time. While I don't necessarily know the motive for the ruling class doing this, there's nothing wrong at looking at a fraudulent story they are pushing and simply telling them that you don't believe them.
Feature. Game. We win.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean...
yeah, I mean, but this is the last slide. So this so I found this like an hour
story of Luigi.
We came live. Oop.
Sorry.
So Savvy tweeted this. So NYPD says the gun found on Luigi Mangione matches shell casings at crime scene. NYPD also found matching fingerprints on a water bottle. Okay, so this is an ABC News report. So let's play this.
Are now saying that the gun found on Luigi Mangione matches shell casings found at the scene where UnitedHealthcare CEO Brian Thompson was murdered. The 26-year-old suspect is being held right now in a Pennsylvania jail cell, fighting extradition to New York. Investigators collecting clues for a possible motive, looking at Mangione's writings and fingerprints found on items near the shooting scene in Manhattan. Our Phil Lipoff joins us now with all the latest details. All right, what do we know about the gun, Phil?
Well, we know that the NYPD was able to get it back from Pennsylvania to the crime lab here in New York. And this is a big piece of evidence, Akira. Up until now, the evidence that had been piling up, the video, the items that were found on Mangione in Pennsylvania when he was found at that McDonald's were largely circumstantial up until today. Now they have matched fingerprints on a bottle and a phone found near the crime scene to Mangione's fingerprints. And just within the last half hour or so, we got word from the New York police commissioner that the gun that was taken from Mangione when he was found in that McDonald's has been flown back here to New York and matched to the 3 shell casings that they found at the murder scene.
So we mentioned that Mangione is fighting extradition to New York. What are the next steps in the legal process here?
The next step will be an extradition hearing. And from speaking to legal experts, the bar in an extradition hearing is relatively low. You have to prove that this is the person you're looking for, and you have probable cause to bring him back. Now, I spoke to ABC contributor Brian Buckmeyer, and he said to me, when you have evidence like this, fingerprint evidence, and a gun matching shell casings at a crime scene, with the bar being so low, it appears he will be brought back here to New York. We don't know that yet. Next step is a hearing.
Bad Cookies in the chat said, is this the same water bottle they saw in the video? If so, then he literally had this exact same shit on for 5
days. Yeah,
so
it makes no sense.
Yeah,
dude.
It makes no sense. And just a random water bottle, like, now you can argue, and I said this to you before we went live, you can argue, like, if they had to tape the scene up and have to check, like, items around. Sure, I could definitely believe that.
Well,
but also
you've been around.
But
You've been
I'll
around
say
New
this
York.
being like this is
Like,
NYPD though.
Yeah.
Like NYPD is shit. You're telling me that they actually are able to do their job?
No,
like,
they do their job for a particular group of people. That's the problem.
People. Right. So
and the
this is
rich
kind of
people
where- this
want
is
a
kind of where-
fucking head on a spike for this. That's what they
Right.
want.
This is
So
right. This is what makes me more sus is because they're able to work this fast, allegedly,
Yeah.
over like a high profile case at this, and given again this guy's wealth and privilege. But a regular person, they're not going to look at this fast. They're not even going to look at it at all.
Nope.
So, they still haven't figured out who killed Biggie. Like, and that was like 20, like
Oh,
over
that's
30
what it
years
is.
ago. But I don't know. I think this just seemed to be more of a like this just seems, as I said to you, like the piling on the extra almost to their detriment in a sense, because it's almost kind of like there's not been a lot of evidence that we have seen in the public. It's just a lot of hearsay, like, oh, there's this, oh, there's that, there's this, but nothing to me it's really substantive to really say, number one, if this was really him at all. Number two, if any of this really is connected to him. But then just the holes in the story of just how he got to, I think, like allegedly Atlanta to New York, and then ended up 5 days later, like in just outside Pittsburgh, when you had plenty of time. There's also the case of the money. They're saying like he had $2,000 equivalent in foreign currency. They didn't tell us which currency it was. Like, was it euro? Was it, I don't know, like pounds? Was he trying to flee the country? Like, these are all kind of stuff. It's just kind of like too much. So, but not sure if we're going to talk about this story. We might at some point, but probably not in this way for a while. But we'll continue watching it. But all I will say is this, and I said this several times, but I'll say it again. Like, don't let this guy be the face of the idea of still needing universal healthcare. Like, and I'm sure like mainstream media is going to try and swerve that topic as much as they can. Number one, don't let them. But number two, again, we did this with Bernie. He became the face of Medicare for All. And then when he decided to like be a cuck, people weren't talking about it anymore. Although I will say, like, I didn't expect, I've been saying, why aren't we talking about Medicare for All on the show for a while? I didn't think it was going to be on my bingo card that we'll actually start talking about it again in this way. But that being said, don't let him be the face of the issue that people have been trying to advocate for decades. Like, we're going to forget about Luigi at some point. But the idea of universal healthcare in America is not going to go away, and it shouldn't. So make it about the issue, not about Prison Bay. As some of you, I see some of you horny toads online, like, bursting over this kid. So,
and build better suppressors is what I have to say. But, unrelated. Anyway, yeah, I mean, and also don't let this manufacturer consent for fucking your freedoms and privacy to be taken away. I'm sure there's a few people who don't like this who are more than willing to let some of those go to protect rich folk. So, keep your head on a swivel. But anyway, yeah, I mean, just craziness. So,
you have to spin the screen. But as we said, we'll probably won't talk about anything worthwhile updating. We will, but this segment is long enough. We probably won't talk about this for a while. But regardless, if you want to support us in what we do here, feel free to scan the QR code that you see at your screen or go to the link that you see below. if you want to give us a donation, or if you're in the YouTube chat right now, you can type in !donate in order to give. Any little bit helps, and we appreciate that. And like we said, support independent media, especially with this issue, because as Reef said, they're going to manufacture consent essentially to make Luigi allegedly the fall guy. So don't let them do that to you. Be very suspect of this, as you should. Like, again, there's a lot of holes in the story that just doesn't make sense. They are probably looking to have a fall guy to patch this up really quickly and move on. But again, this idea is about universal healthcare. This is something that all of us need. And again, I know a lot of you are sharing your horror stories in the chat. Don't make this be about this one guy, right? So please don't forget to like and subscribe, and please share to fight the suppression that we're seeing on YouTube. Make sure you leave a comment, share your horror stories. We love to hear them. No one likes their insurance, healthcare insurance. Or if you don't have insurance, let us know the struggles you might have had with your families or whatever regarding this issue. And help us get to 3K so we're able to kind of continue making this comment and share this truth to more people. And thanks for watching.